The distress signal came through at 0300 hours, weak and broken. Captain Daeun Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon's Edge, staring at the flickering message on her screen. The Valkyrie system was calling for help. She ordered her crew to change course immediately. "How long until we arrive?" she asked. Lieutenant Jiwon Choi checked the navigation system. 16 hours at maximum speed, Captain," Daeun nodded. The Valkyrie were a peaceful species, known across the galaxy for their beautiful art and deep philosophical traditions. They had no military to speak of. If they were calling for help, something terrible must have happened. The journey felt longer than it should have. Daeun had visited the Valkyrie homeworld twice before. She remembered walking through their crystal gardens, listening to their music that seemed to come from the air itself. The Valkyrie had welcomed humanity warmly when Earth joined the Galactic Council 87 years ago. They were friends. When the Horizon's Edge finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valkyrie system, the crew fell silent. The main view screen showed devastation on a scale none of them had ever seen. 3 Valkyrie colony worlds hung in space, their surfaces scorched black. Orbital stations drifted as burnt-out hulks. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers. "My God," Jiwon whispered. Her hands shook as she tried to scan for survivors. Daeun forced herself to stay calm. "All stations begin search and rescue operations. Scan every planet, every moon, every station. Someone might still be alive." For 6 hours they searched. They found nothing but death. Cities reduced to ash, ships torn apart. The silence was absolute. No communications. No distress beacons. Nothing. Then Dr. Junho Yang, the ship's xenoanthropologist, detected something. "Captain, I'm reading faint life signs on the 4th moon of Velkara Prime. Underground, it might be a bunker." Daeun assembled a team immediately. They took a shuttle down to the moon's surface, following the readings to a hidden entrance buried under collapsed rock. It took 30 minutes to clear the debris. When they finally opened the door, they found 43 Valkyrie huddled in the darkness. The survivors were terrified at first. They had been hiding for 4 days with no food and little water. When they realized humans had come to help them, several began to weep. Daeun helped an elderly Valkyrie female to her feet. The woman's name was Yoonji Nam, a teacher who had managed to get her students to safety when the attack began. "What happened here?" Daeun asked gently. Yoonji's voice was hollow. "The Thraxians came 3 days ago. They broadcast a message to every Valkyrie world simultaneously. They said our territory now belonged to their empire. They said we had 1 hour to surrender completely or face extermination." She paused, struggling to continue. "We tried to contact the Galactic Council. We begged for help. They said they would hold an emergency session to discuss the situation." And then, Daeun already knew the answer, but she needed to hear it. The Thraxians didn't wait. They attacked all 23 of our worlds at once. They bombed our cities. They destroyed our hospitals and schools. Yoonji couldn't finish. She buried her face in her hands. Another survivor, a young male named Chang Min-oh, spoke up. His voice was filled with quiet rage. They were systematic about it. They targeted population centers first, then infrastructure. Then they sent ground troops to execute anyone they found alive. I watched them line up children outside my city's shelter. They killed them all while broadcasting it across the planet. They wanted us to see. They wanted us to know there would be no mercy. Daeun felt something cold settle in her chest. "How many survived?" "We don't know," Unji said. "Maybe a few thousand across all our worlds. Maybe less. We were 14 billion people 4 days ago. 14 billion. The number was incomprehensible. Daeun had seen war before. Every human had learned about Earth's violent history. But this was different. This was systematic. This was genocide. What did the Galactic Council do? She asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Changmin laughed bitterly. They held their emergency session. It took them 2 days to reach a decision. By then, it was over. They voted for non-interference. They said it was an internal territorial dispute between 2 sovereign powers. They said military intervention would set a dangerous precedent. But they did issue a formal condemnation, Yoonji added with hollow sarcasm, and economic sanctions. The Thraxian ambassador laughed during the announcement. He actually laughed. He called us evolutionary deadweight. He said the galaxy would be better off without species too weak to defend themselves. Daeun helped the survivors back to her ship. She had her medical team treat their injuries and give them food and water. Then she went to her ready room and began reviewing everything her crew had collected. Lieutenant Jiwan had managed to salvage data recorders from several destroyed stations. The footage was horrific. Dayun watched Thraxian soldiers herding Velkari families into execution centers. She watched hospitals explode with patients still inside. She watched cultural sites thousands of years old deliberately destroyed. She watched it all, forcing herself not to look away. This needed to be documented. The galaxy needed to see what had happened. She sent everything directly to Earth Command with priority alpha encryption. Then she sent a second copy to Ambassador Heejin Lee, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. The message was simple. The Council's non-interference policy just allowed genocide. Humanity needs to see this. The response came faster than she expected. Admiral Minho Park, commander of Earth's United Fleet, appeared on her screen. His face was grim. "Captain Kim, I've reviewed your report. I'm sending it to every human government and military command. Ambassador Lee is presenting it to the Council within the hour." He paused. "Prepare yourself. This is going to change everything." 6 hours later, Ambassador Heejin stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber held representatives from 200 species, each one comfortable in their seats of power. Heejin had worked in this chamber for 15 years, always diplomatic, always measured, always playing by their rules. Not today. She displayed the footage from the Velkari worlds on every screen in the chamber. She made them watch. Several representatives tried to object. She ignored them. For 40 minutes, she showed them the reality of what non-interference meant. She showed them children dying. She showed them the Thraxian ambassador laughing. When it was over, the chamber was silent. 14 billion sentient beings are dead, Heejin said quietly. They asked for your help. You debated. They begged for mercy. You formed a committee. They died while you discussed procedures and precedents. And now you sit there, comfortable in your seats, and you call this civilization. The council chairman, an ancient being from a species that prided itself on wisdom, spoke carefully. Ambassador Lee, we understand your anger, but the Galactic Council cannot intervene in every territorial dispute. We must maintain neutrality. Genocide is not a territorial dispute, Heejin said. Her voice was ice. And your neutrality is complicity. The Council voted to maintain their previous position. Economic sanctions against the Thraxian Empire. A formal condemnation. No military action. The Thraxian ambassador actually smiled as he left the chamber. Heejin returned to the human embassy and opened a secure channel to Earth. President Somin Kang appeared on the screen, along with Admiral Minho and the entire High Command. They did nothing, Heejin reported. They're going to do nothing. President Somin was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke with absolute certainty. Then we will. Admiral Minho looked at his command staff. Officers who had trained their entire lives to be diplomatic, measured, and controlled. Officers who had been taught to suppress humanity's violent past and fit into galactic civilization. He thought about the footage he had watched. He thought about 14 billion dead. For 87 years, he said slowly, we've played by their rules. We've buried what we were. We've pretended to be something we're not, because they told us our way was too barbaric, too aggressive, too violent. We became what they wanted us to be. He stood up and his officers stood with him. No more. It's time to remind the galaxy what apex predators look like when you hurt their friends. President Somin Kang called the emergency session at midnight. Earth's High Command gathered in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. 200 meters of reinforced steel and concrete, separating them from the world above. Every military leader, every intelligence chief, every strategic planner sat around the table. They all knew why they were here. General Taeyong Han pulled up the Velkari footage on the main display. Nobody spoke as it played. They had all seen it before, but repetition didn't make it easier. When it ended, the room remained silent for a full minute. The Galactic Council has made their position clear, President Somin said finally. They will not act. They have proven that their system protects the strong and abandons the weak. The question before us now is simple. What do we do? We signed the Treaty of Mars, Foreign Minister Do-hyun Lim pointed out. He looked uncomfortable. We agreed to abide by Council protocols. We agreed to seal away our more aggressive military technologies. If we break that treaty, we become outcasts. Outcasts from what? Admiral Minho asked coldly. A club that watches genocide and does nothing? I'll wear that label proudly. Engineer Yuna Song, head of advanced weapons development, spoke up. Admiral, I need to be clear about what you're asking. The sealed facilities contain weapon systems we haven't touched in 8 decades. Planet crackers, nanoswarms, hunter-killer AI, psychological warfare systems. Things the Council called crimes against sentient life. If we open those vaults, there's no going back. Good, Admiral Minho said. I don't want to go back. Dr. Junho Yang leaned forward. He had spent 20 years studying alien cultures, learning their languages, understanding their philosophies. He had dedicated his life to peaceful coexistence. When he spoke, everyone listened. I've been thinking about something, he said quietly. When humanity joined the Galactic Council, we changed ourselves. We suppressed our aggressive instincts. We dismantled our most effective weapons. We rewrote our military doctrine to be less frightening to other species. We did all of this because they told us it was the price of civilization. Heat pulled up an image of the Valkyrie homeworld before the attack. Beautiful, peaceful, gone. But their civilization let 14 billion beings die while they debated committee procedures. They had rules for everything except the one thing that mattered, protecting the innocent. Maybe we had it right the first time. Maybe our way, violent as it was, at least stood for something. The room erupted in arguments. Some supported immediate action. Others worried about the consequences. President Soman let them talk for 10 minutes before calling for silence. We will put it to a vote, she said. But understand what we're voting for. This isn't just about military action. This is about fundamentally changing Earth's place in the galaxy. If we do this, we're declaring that we will not be bound by a system that enables genocide. We're saying that human morality, human justice matters more than galactic approval. The vote was taken. 43 in favor, 7 against, 3 abstentions. President Soman stood. Then it's decided. General Han, begin Operation Reckoning. Engineer Song, unseal the facilities. Admiral Park, prepare the fleet. She paused, looking at each of them. And may whatever God you believe in forgive us for what we're about to. Tours the next 72 hours changed everything. Engineer. Yuna and her team descended into the sealed weapons facilities in the Mojave Desert. The massive doors hadn't been opened since 2260. Inside, preserved in perfect vacuum, sat the weapons humanity had promised never to use again. She walked past rows of quantum torpedoes, each one capable of ripping a hole in space-time. She passed laboratories where nanoswarms waited in suspension, ready to disassemble matter at the molecular level. She stood before the AI cores that ran hunter-killer systems so efficient they had scared even humans. Begin full system activation, she ordered. All protocols are suspended. We're going to war. Across Earth's solar system, ships that had been decommissioned came back online. The Retribution, a battleship the Council had called too aggressive, powered up its weapon systems. The Vengeance, the Fury, the Reckoning itself, all ships deemed too intimidating for galactic civilization. They had been mothballed, preserved just in case. That case had arrived. Captain Hanel Kwan stood on the bridge of the Retribution and felt the ship wake up around him. Every system was military grade. No diplomatic facilities. No conference rooms. This ship had one purpose: to destroy enemy forces so completely that surrender became the only logical option. All weapons online, Captain, his tactical officer reported. Kinetic batteries at full charge. Missile tubes loaded. Electronic warfare suite active. We're ready, Hanul nodded. He had been trained on this ship 20 years ago, then transferred to diplomatic vessels when the Retribution was retired. He had always known somewhere deep down that he might command her one day. He just hadn't expected it to be like this. Intelligence officer Jinwoo Park had been living undercover in Thraxian space for 7 years. He ran a trading company, bought and sold goods, made contacts. Everyone thought he was just a human merchant trying to make profit in the Empire. Nobody suspected he was Earth's eyes and ears in enemy territory. When the coded message came through, Jinwoo didn't hesitate. He activated every human operative in the region, 12 people scattered across 6 Thraxian worlds. He also contacted his network of aliens, people who disagreed with their government's actions but had no power to stop them. It's happening, he told them through encrypted channels. Earth is coming. If you want to help, we need intelligence on military installations, fleet movements, command structures. Everything. The information started flowing within hours. Thraxian security was good, but they had never considered humans a serious threat. They had gotten sloppy. Jinwoo compiled everything and transmitted it back to Earth Command in burst transmissions that lasted microseconds. Back on Earth, analyst Seojun Baek processed the intelligence data. He had a gift for seeing patterns others missed. Within 24 hours, he had identified the Thraxian military's command structure, their supply lines, their strategic weaknesses. He presented his findings to Admiral Minho. The Thraxian Empire is powerful, Seojun explained, but it's overextended. They've been expanding aggressively for decades. Their military is spread across 300 worlds. Their command and control runs through central hubs. If we can disable those hubs, their fleet becomes uncoordinated. Where's the primary command center? Admiral Minho asked. Thraxa Prime, their homeworld. Everything flows through there. Every order given to destroy the Velkari worlds came from that one location. Admiral Minho studied the data. Then that's where we're going. But not yet. First, we teach them fear. On the 7th day after the Velkari genocide, President Soman addressed the Galactic Council through hologram. She didn't ask for permission to speak. She simply appeared on every screen simultaneously. 87 years ago, humanity joined this council in good faith. We changed ourselves to meet your standards. We became what you wanted us to be, peaceful, diplomatic, civilized. She paused. But we watched you allow genocide. We watched you debate while 14 billion beings died. We watched you protect the murderers with your rules and procedures. The council chamber erupted in protests. President Soman ignored them. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council. We are done pretending that your system works. We are done playing by rules that enable monsters. From this moment forward, humanity will operate under one principle. Never again. Never again will we stand by while innocents are slaughtered. Never again will we value procedure over life. This is outrageous, the council chairman sputtered. You cannot simply, we already have. President Soman cut him off. And there's one more thing you should know. We're not asking for permission to act. We're not requesting council approval. We're telling you what we're going to do. The Thraxian Empire committed genocide. They will face justice, human justice. If anyone tries to stop us, they will discover why our ancestors feared the dark. The transmission ended. 2 hours later, Admiral Minho sent a message directly to the Thraxian Emperor. It was simple. The entire recording of Velkari deaths compressed into 30 minutes. Every execution, every burning city, every screaming child, everything. At the end of the recording, Admiral Minho's face appeared. You killed them because you could, because you thought no one would stop you. That calculation just changed. We're coming for you. We're coming for every officer who gave orders, every soldier who pulled a trigger, every politician who approved the genocide. We're coming, and we're not coming to arrest you for trial. We're coming to show you what happens when you make humanity stop pretending to be civilized. This is where we'll be in 72 hours. Your forward military base at Drakkar Station. If you're brave enough to face us, come and try to stop us. If you're smart enough to be afraid, start running. Either way, we're coming. Commander Borishin assembled her Ghost Squadron. 12 ships equipped with stealth technology the Galactic Council didn't know existed. Humanity had developed it decades ago but kept it secret. One of many weapons they had hidden away just in case. Our mission is simple, she told her pilots. We hit them first. We hit them hard. We show them that nowhere is safe. We teach them to be afraid of the dark. The Thraxian Empire didn't take Earth's threat seriously. They had existed for 3,000 years, conquered 400 worlds, and never lost a war. When Admiral Minho's message reached Thraxa Prime, the military command laughed. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy, barely a century old in space. They had no history of major conflicts. They played diplomat and traitor. They were soft. General Vakros, supreme commander of the Thraxian military, watched the human admiral's message 3 times. Then he threw together a response fleet. 75 warships, more than enough to crush any human force. He sent them to Drakkar Station with orders to destroy the humans and send a message back to Earth. This is what happens when you challenge the Empire. The fleet arrived at Drakkar Station 60 hours later. They found the human ships waiting exactly where Admiral Minho had promised. 12 vessels, small by Thraxian standards. The Thraxian commander opened a channel. Human ships, you are outgunned and outnumbered. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick. Captain Hanel Kwan sat in the command chair of the Retribution and smiled without humor. Thraxian fleet, you killed 14 billion peaceful beings, you laughed about it, you celebrated it. Now you get to learn what happens when you hurt humanity's friends. The channel cut off. The Thraxians opened fire. What happened next would be studied in military academies for the next 100 years. The human ships didn't scatter. They didn't run. They moved in perfect coordination, every vessel acting as part of a single organism. The Retribution led the attack, its kinetic weapons firing at speeds that shouldn't have been possible. Tungsten. Rounds accelerated to a fraction of light speed, punched through Thraxian shields like they weren't there. 3 Thraxian destroyers exploded in the first 10 seconds. The Thraxians tried to adjust, tried to target the human ships, but their sensors couldn't get a lock. Electronic warfare systems, more advanced than anything in the Empire, fed false data to their targeting computers. Thraxian weapons fired at ghosts while human missiles found their marks with perfect accuracy. Commander Bora Shin's Ghost Squadron hit them from behind. The stealth ships had been waiting, invisible to Thraxian sensors. They launched hunter-killer drones, small autonomous weapons that attached to enemy hulls and burned through armor with plasma cutters. 20 Thraxian ships found themselves crippled before they even knew they were under attack. Deploy nanoswarms, Captain Hanuel ordered. Canisters launched from the Retribution's missile tubes. They looked harmless, just small containers floating through space. Then they opened. Billions of microscopic machines spilled out, each one programmed with a single purpose: disassemble Thraxian ships at the molecular level. The swarms hit like an invisible plague. Metal began to dissolve. Systems failed. Hulls developed holes that spread like disease. Thraxian engineers tried everything to stop it, but you can't fight something you can't see. Ships that had been battle-ready minutes ago started falling apart. The Thraxian commander broadcast a distress signal. "This is Commander Zakir to all Imperial forces. Humans are using weapons that..." A kinetic round removed his ship's bridge. The transmission died. The battle lasted 43 minutes. 75 Thraxian warships reduced to debris. The humans lost nothing. 0 casualties. 0 damage. Commander Bora stood on the bridge of her stealth ship and watched the debris field expand. She felt sick. This was what humanity had promised never to do again. This was the kind of warfare that had made Earth's own history so dark. But when she thought of the Valkyrie children executed while the galaxy watched, the sickness faded. "All ships move to secondary targets," she ordered. "We have 6 more military outposts to hit before dawn." News of the Drakkar Station massacre spread across the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions. Species that had laughed at Earth's withdrawal now whispered nervously. Nobody had suspected humanity possessed such weapons. Nobody had imagined they could be so efficient at killing. The Thraxian Emperor, a being who had ruled for 200 years and never known defeat, convened his war council. General Vakros stood before him, his career hanging by a thread. "How?" the Emperor demanded. "How did 75 warships lose to 12? "They have weapons we've never encountered," Vakros explained, his voice shaking. "Their tactics are unlike anything in our military doctrine. They don't fight the way civilized species fight. They use deception. They target weaknesses we didn't know we had. They show no mercy. Then we send more ships. We overwhelm them with numbers. Your Majesty, I don't think you understand. This wasn't a battle. This was an execution. They destroyed our fleet like we were primitives with spears. If we send more ships using conventional tactics, we'll just lose more ships." The Emperor's face darkened. "Are you telling me the mighty Thraxian Empire is afraid of humans?" Vakros met his Emperor's eyes. "Yes, I am. And you should be too." On Earth, analyst Seojin Bayek worked 20-hour days processing intelligence from Jinwu's network. The picture he built was detailed and damning. He traced the genocide orders back to their source, a military planning committee on Thraxa Prime. 7 officers, 3 politicians, and the Emperor himself. They had planned it for months. It wasn't random. It wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated, systematic murder. He presented his findings to Admiral Minho. Every order came from here. He highlighted a facility on Thraxa Prime, the Central Military Command. Every execution schedule, every target list, every decision to kill civilians, it all originated in this building. Admiral Minho studied the data. Then that's where we're going. But first we need to make sure they can't rebuild. Commander Shin, you know what to do. For the next 40 days, Commander Bora's Ghost Squadron became a nightmare that haunted Thraxian space. They hit weapons factories on the edge worlds. They destroyed shipyards. They targeted supply depots. They never engaged in fair fights. They struck from stealth, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Thraxian military tried everything to stop them. They set traps. They laid ambushes. They increased patrols. Nothing worked. The Ghost Squadron moved like shadows, untouchable, and everywhere at once. On day 12, they destroyed the Thraxian Empire's largest weapons manufacturing facility. 300 workers died in the explosion. Commander Bora forced herself to watch the casualty reports. She had to remember the cost. She had to remember that violence, even righteous violence, always had a price. Do you think we're becoming what we fought against? Her second-in-command asked quietly. Bora was silent for a long time. I don't know. But I know that if we stop now, the Velkari died for nothing. The galaxy will learn that genocide has no consequences. So we keep going. We do what needs to be done. And when it's over, we live with what we've become. Back on the horizon's edge, Captain Daeun worked with the Velkari survivors. Yunji Nam had become their spokesperson. She helped humans understand Thraxian psychology, their culture, their military thinking. She wanted justice for her people, but the violence troubled her. My people were pacifists, she told Daeun one evening. We believed that peace was always possible, that violence was never the answer. The Thraxians proved us wrong. They killed us because we couldn't fight back. But watching what humans are doing. She trailed off. You think we're going too far? Daeun asked. I think I'm glad you're doing it, Yunji admitted. I think I hate myself for being glad. My people would be ashamed of me. But when I close my eyes, I see my students lined up for execution. I hear them crying for their parents. And I want the Thraxians to suffer. I want them to feel what we felt. Does that make me a monster? Daeun put a hand on the Velkari's shoulder. It makes you someone who lost everything. And no, you're not a monster. The monsters are the ones who gave the orders. By day 40, the Thraxian military was in chaos. They had lost 47 outposts, 11 major facilities, and over 200 ships. They hadn't destroyed a single human vessel. Their casualty rate was 30,000 to 0. Morale was collapsing. General Vakro stood before his emperor again. Your Majesty, we need to negotiate. We negotiate nothing, the emperor roared. We are Thraxians. We have never surrendered. We will never surrender. Then we will die, Vakro said flatly, because the humans aren't fighting to conquer us. They're fighting to destroy us, and right now they're winning. The emperor's rage filled the room. Then bring the entire fleet to Thraxa Prime. Let them come here. Let them try to break through our defenses. This is our homeworld. We have 2,000 warships protecting it. We have orbital platforms. We have ground defenses. Let the humans come and break themselves against our walls. Vakros bowed and left. He knew what was coming. The humans would come to Thraxa Prime, and when they arrived, the real war would begin. On Earth, Admiral Minho received the intelligence report. The Thraxian fleet was gathering at their homeworld. Every ship they had left was being pulled back for defense. It was exactly what he had been waiting for. Begin Phase 2, he ordered. Assemble the main fleet. We're taking the war to their doorstep. Captain Hanal Kwan stood on the bridge of the Retribution and felt the weight of what was coming. They had been fighting small battles, hitting targets, and running. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thraxa system. 170 warships arranged in perfect formation faced the Thraxian homeworld. Vice Admiral Mirai Huang stood on the bridge of the flagship Absolute Zero, watching the tactical display light up with enemy contacts. 2,000 Thraxian warships, 40 orbital defense platforms, planetary shields covering the entire world, 500 million soldiers on the ground. It was the most heavily defended location in the known galaxy. "Admiral, they're hailing us," the communications officer reported. Admiral Mirai nodded. "Put them through." The Thraxian Emperor himself appeared on screen. He was ancient, his scaled skin covered in scars from 100 battles. He had ruled his empire for 2 centuries and never compromised with anyone. "So the humans finally show themselves," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You've been running and hiding like cowards striking from the shadows. Now you face the full might of the Empire. Surrender now and I will grant you quick deaths." Admiral Mirai smiled coldly. "We're not here to surrender. We're here to arrest you and every officer who participated in the Valkyrie genocide. You will stand trial. You will answer for what you did." The Emperor laughed. "You and what army, human? You have 170 ships. I have 2,000. You have no orbital support. I have 40 platforms. You cannot win this fight." "We're not here to win," Admiral Mirai said quietly. "We're here to ensure you lose." She cut the transmission. The battle began immediately. 2,000 Thraxian ships surged forward, confident in their numerical superiority. The human fleet didn't meet them head-on. Instead, they scattered, breaking into smaller groups that moved with impossible coordination. Captain Hanul led a squadron of 30 ships directly into the Thraxian formation. Missiles flew. Energy weapons burned through space. Ships exploded on both sides. But the humans weren't trying to destroy the fleet. They were trying to draw them away from the planet it worked. The Thraxian commander, eager to crush the human forces, pursued them. Half his fleet chased after Captain Hanul's group, leaving the orbital defenses exposed. That's when Commander Bora's Ghost Squadron struck. The stealth ships, invisible to Thraxian sensors, moved through the gaps in the defense grid. They planted charges on the orbital platforms, precision explosives designed to cripple the stations without destroying them completely. The humans didn't want to kill civilians on the surface below. They wanted to disable the military infrastructure. 12 platforms went offline in the first 10 minutes. The Thraxian commander realized his mistake too late. He tried to pull his ships back, but the human fleet was already inside his formation, causing chaos. Thraxian ships collided with each other, trying to reform their defensive lines. It wasn't a battle. It was a disaster. But Admiral Mirai wasn't interested in destroying the fleet. She wanted something else. While the space battle raged, she launched her real weapon, cyber warfare. Hacker So-Young John sat in a darkened room aboard the Absolute Zero, surrounded by screens showing code flowing faster than a human eye could follow. She had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Every Thraxian system, every network, every communication relay, she had studied them all. "Initiating breach," she announced. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced speed. Backdoors that Intelligence Officer Jinwoo had planted months ago suddenly activated. Security systems that should have been impenetrable opened like unlocked doors. Within seconds, So-Young had access to the Thraxian military network. She didn't try to destroy it. She took control of it. Planetary shields flickered and failed. Automated defense systems stopped firing. Communication networks went down. And then, most importantly, she began broadcasting directly to every screen on Thraxa Prime. The Thraxian civilians watched in horror as footage of the Valkyrie genocide played on every device. The Emperor had kept the details secret from most of his population. They knew about the war, but they didn't know about the execution centers, the burning hospitals, the murdered children. Now they saw everything. So-Young didn't stop there. She displayed the orders, every command to kill civilians, every decision to target schools, every message celebrating the extermination. And she made sure everyone knew exactly who had given those orders. Riots erupted across Thraxa Prime within hours. Millions of Thraxians took to the streets demanding answers. How could their government do this? How could they murder children? The Emperor had told them the Valkyrie were terrorists, threats that needed to be eliminated. The footage showed the truth. They were peaceful people being systematically slaughtered. The Thraxian military found itself fighting 2 wars. One in space against the humans, one on the ground against their own population. Colonel Do-Hyun Lim waited for his moment. While the planet descended into chaos, he led 3,000 human soldiers on a precision insertion. They didn't use drop pods or shuttles, both too easy to detect. Instead, they used stealth insertion craft, Small ships that could slip through the weakened defenses. Their target. The Central Military Command building where the genocide had been planned. The building was supposed to be impenetrable. It was protected by 10,000 elite guards, automated defense systems, and enough firepower to level a city. But So-young had disabled half the automated systems, and the guards were being pulled away to deal with riots across the capital. Colonel Do-hyun's team moved through the building like smoke. They wore advanced armor that could bend light, making them nearly invisible. They carried weapons designed to incapacitate rather than kill. They were here for arrests, not executions. They found General Vakros in his office watching the destruction of his fleet on multiple screens. He didn't even reach for his weapon when the humans appeared. "It's over, isn't it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Colonel Do-hyun replied. "You're under arrest for war crimes. You have the right to remain silent." Vakros laughed bitterly. "I tried to stop this. I told the Emperor it was wrong. But I followed orders anyway. Does that make me less guilty? That's for a court to decide. Come quietly and no one else needs to die today." They arrested 17 officers in the Central Command building. Each one was responsible for planning and executing the genocide. Each one came quietly, too shocked by the sudden collapse of their empire to resist. The Emperor was different. They found him in his palace, surrounded by his personal guard. When Colonel Do-hyun's team breached the throne room, the guards opened fire. The humans responded with precision. Stun weapons dropped the guards without killing them. In 30 seconds, the throne room was secure. The Emperor stood alone, facing the humans with pure hatred in his eyes. "You've destroyed everything," he said. 3,000 years of civilization. Gone because you couldn't accept the natural order. The strong dominate the weak. That's how the universe works. "No," Colonel Do-hyun replied. "That's how your empire worked. And your empire just ended." They took the Emperor into custody. As human soldiers led him away in restraints, he looked back at his throne one last time. He had been born in that palace. He had ruled from that throne for 200 years. Now it was over. The space battle continued for another 16 hours, but the outcome was inevitable. With their command structure captured and their planet in chaos, the Thraxian fleet surrendered. Admiral Mirai accepted their surrender with specific conditions. All officers above the rank of captain would be detained for investigation. All ships would be disarmed. All weapons facilities would be dismantled. The Thraxian military, once the most powerful force in the sector, ceased to exist. Dr. Changmin-oh worked around the clock treating wounded soldiers. Not just human soldiers, but Thraxian casualties too. The humans had set up field hospitals on Thraxa Prime, treating anyone who needed help. Many Thraxians were confused. Why would their conquerors heal them? But one young Thraxian soldier understood. "You're not here to destroy us," he said as Dr. Changmin bandaged his wounds. "You're here to stop the ones who destroyed others." "That's right," Dr. Changmin replied. "We're not here for revenge. We're here for justice." The psychological cost weighed heavily on the human forces. Dr. Changmin treated soldiers suffering from what they had done. Many had nightmares. Many questioned whether the violence had been necessary. Some felt like monsters. "We killed thousands of Thraxian soldiers," one soldier told him during a counseling session. "I know they were fighting for an evil cause, but they were still people. How do I live with that?" Dr. Changmin didn't have easy answers. You live with it by remembering why you did it. You live with it by making sure it wasn't for nothing. You live with it by being better than what you had to become. The Galactic Council, watching from their chambers light years away, convened an emergency session. They had watched Earth defeat the Thraxian Empire in 97 days. They had watched humans use weapons and tactics that terrified them. Now they had to decide how to respond. Some species called for immediate action against Earth. "They're too dangerous," one representative argued. "They've proven they'll ignore galactic law and do whatever they want. They need to be stopped," others disagreed. "They did what we should have done. They stopped genocide while we debated procedures. Maybe they're not the ones who need to be stopped." The trial began 6 months after the siege of Thraxa Prime. The Galactic Court of Justice, rarely used for anything important, suddenly became the center of galactic attention. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds watched as the Thraxian Emperor and his command staff faced judgment. Ambassador Hyejin Lee prosecuted the case personally. She had spent months preparing, organizing evidence, interviewing survivors. She wanted to make sure there was no room for doubt, no chance of escape through legal technicalities. The Emperor sat in the defendant's chair, chains on his wrists, surrounded by guards. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his throne and crown. But his eyes still burned with arrogance. "This court has no authority over me," he declared. "I am the sovereign ruler of the Thraxian Empire. You cannot judge me." "You are the ruler of an empire that no longer exists," Hyujin replied calmly. "And this court judges war crimes which transcend national sovereignty. You ordered the systematic execution of 14 billion sentient beings. That's not war. That's genocide. And for that you will answer." She began presenting evidence. Footage from the Valkyrie worlds showing cities burning, medical records documenting the deaths, communications intercepts proving the orders came from the Emperor himself, testimony from survivors like Yunji Nam, who stood before the court and described watching her students die. The courtroom fell silent as Yunji spoke. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply told the truth in a steady voice. "They lined the children up outside our school. The youngest was 6 years old. His name was Taman. He asked me if his mother was coming to get him. I told him yes, even though I knew she was already dead. Then the Thraxian soldiers opened fire. It took 4 minutes for all 43 children to die. The soldiers laughed. They actually laughed. Several beings in the courtroom began to weep. Even some Thraxians, citizens who had believed their government's lies, covered their faces in shame. Captain Daeun testified about finding the survivors. Dr. Junho presented evidence about the systematic nature of the genocide, how it was planned months in advance. Intelligence Officer Jinwoo showed communications proving the Galactic Council had been warned and chose not to act. The Emperor's defense lawyer tried everything. He argued that the Valkyrie were in disputed territory. He claimed they were a security threat. He suggested that cultural differences meant different standards of warfare applied. Every argument fell apart under the weight of evidence. On the 3rd week of trial, the court played the complete recording of the genocide. 72 hours of systematic murder, compressed into a 5-hour presentation. The court watched Valkyrie hospitals bombed. They watched execution centers operating like factories. They watched children herded like animals to their deaths. When it ended, the judge, an ancient being from a species known for their wisdom, spoke for the first time in days. "I have presided over this court for 300 years. I have seen wars. I have seen atrocities, but I have never seen evil on this scale, conducted with such calculation and cruelty. This was not war. This was extermination, and it was done while the galaxy watched and did nothing." The Emperor's lawyer tried one final argument. "The Galactic Council's own rules say we cannot interfere in sovereign disputes. My client was operating within..." "Silence," the judge said quietly. "Do not insult this court by hiding behind rules that were meant to prevent war, not enable genocide." The council failed. Their system failed. That failure does not excuse this atrocity. The verdict came 3 days later. Guilty on all counts. The Emperor, every general, every officer who had given orders to kill civilians. Guilty of genocide, guilty of war crimes, guilty of crimes against sentient life. The sentences were harsh. Life imprisonment for the Emperor and his top command staff. Long prison terms for officers who had followed orders. The Thraxian military was permanently disbanded. Their weapons facilities were to be destroyed. Reparations would be paid to the Valkyrie survivors for the next 500 years. The Emperor stood to hear his sentence. For the first time, the arrogance was gone. He looked old, tired, defeated. "Do you have anything to say?" the judge asked. "I regret nothing," the Emperor said quietly. "The strong should rule. The weak should perish. That is the natural order. Then you will spend the rest of your life contemplating how the strong fell and the weak survived," the judge replied. "Take him away." The trial's aftermath reshaped the galaxy. The Galactic Council faced its own reckoning. 63 species formally withdrew, citing the Council's failure to prevent genocide. The organization that had governed galactic relations for 1,000 years was suddenly irrelevant. "Ambassador," Hyujin addressed the remaining council members one final time. "You built a system that valued procedure over life. You created rules that protected the powerful and abandoned the helpless. You watched 14 billion beings die because you were afraid to act. That failure will define your legacy. She paused, looking at each representative. Humanity will not rejoin this council. We're done with your system. But we're not done with the galaxy. We'll be out there watching. And if anyone tries what the Thraxians did, if anyone commits genocide while you debate and form committees, we'll stop them. Just like we stopped the Thraxians. You can call us vigilantes. You can call us warmongers. We don't care. We'd rather be feared for stopping evil than respected for enabling it. She left the chamber. The council sat in silence, knowing they had been weighed and found wanting. New organizations formed to fill the void. 3 separate coalitions, each with strict protocols for humanitarian intervention. Each one included specific triggers for military action against genocide. The galaxy learned its lesson, but it took 14 billion deaths to teach it. On Earth, President Salman addressed the planet for the last time before leaving office. She looked tired, aged by the weight of decisions that had cost so many lives. We did what was necessary, she said. We saved the Valkyrie from extinction. We brought war criminals to justice. We proved that genocide will have consequences. But we also remembered what we're capable of. We remembered the darkness inside us, the violence we can unleash when we stop trying to be civilized. She looked directly into the camera. That knowledge should terrify us. We killed thousands of Thraxian soldiers. We destroyed their empire. We did things we promised we would never do again. Yes, we had good reasons. Yes, we saved innocent lives. But we still became the thing we swore we wouldn't be. We must never forget that. We must never become comfortable with what we had to do. Admiral Minho retired after the trial. He bought a small house in the countryside and spent his days tending a garden. People called him a hero. He didn't feel like one. He felt like someone who had done terrible things for good reasons and would spend the rest of his life wondering if there had been another way. Captain Dayun returned to exploration. She took the horizon's edge to the far edges of known space, searching for beauty in a galaxy that had shown her so much ugliness. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes she woke up at night remembering the burned Valkyrie worlds. Dr. Junho worked with the Valkyrie survivors, helping them rebuild their culture. It was slow work. Trauma like that didn't heal quickly. But the Valkyrie were resilient. They were survivors. They would endure. Yunjinam became the voice of her people. She traveled the galaxy, speaking about the genocide, making sure nobody forgot. She didn't speak with anger or desire for revenge. She spoke with quiet determination. My people believed peace was always the answer, she told audiences. We were wrong. Sometimes violence is necessary to stop greater violence. But we were also right about something. Peace is still the goal. War is not the answer. It's the last resort when all other answers fail. The Valkyrie population slowly grew. From a few thousand survivors, they rebuilt. Other species helped, guilty about their inaction. The Valkyrie accepted the help but never forgot the lesson they had learned. They remained peaceful, but they were no longer pacifists. They maintained a small defense force trained by humans just in case. Commander Bora Shin took a teaching position at Earth's military academy. She trained the next generation of officers, making sure they understood the cost of war. Every class began the same way. She showed them footage from the Valkyrie genocide. Then she showed them footage from the battles against the Thraxians. Both of these things are terrible, she told her students. But one was done to satisfy cruelty. One was done to stop cruelty. The difference matters, but so does the similarity. Violence is violence, even when it's necessary. Never forget that. Never enjoy it. And never use it unless every other option has failed. Engineer Unisong supervised the resealing of the weapons facilities. Every weapon that had been used in the war, every technology that had terrified the galaxy was locked away again. Above the sealed vault, they installed a new inscription. Opened when civilization failed. May we never need them again. But if we do, we will not hesitate. 50 years passed. The galaxy changed. 3 new coalitions governed interspecies relations, each one with actual teeth. Genocide hadn't been attempted since the Thraxian War. Not because species had become more moral, but because everyone remembered what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be civilized.